Hello, Get Elastic readers. My name is Linda Bustos. I'm an author with Get Elastic, and I wanted to share with you a presentation that I recently gave at an e-commerce conference called Ecom Bash in Austin. The presentation, as you can see, is Killing the Conversion Killers: Insights from Real-World E-commerce A/B Experiments. And I know y'all couldn't make it out to come and see it live, so we're doing it here in a recording. So first I want to talk about ways to really hone in on your A/B testing strategy, because one of the double-edged swords about A/B testing and experimentation is that you can literally test absolutely anything and everything. So to be a very disciplined A/B tester and get good results, you want to have a system for trimming the fat. And what I recommend, number one, is to develop a solid hypothesis. A lot of people use A/B testing to settle design debates and kind of the arm wrestling that can happen between departments. So, let's just A/B test it. But you really need to be realistic about what type of A/B testing budget you have. And I'm not talking about finances. I'm talking about the opportunity cost to testing higher value experiments versus granular things and getting a little bit, majoring in the minors, right? So you want to have a solid hypothesis behind every experiment, and the best way to do that is to use actual data and identify conversion in underperforming areas of your site through things like heat maps, user testing live with your customers. What kind of things are people reporting on the website, calling into your customer service? What can you see in analytics in your funnel reports? What conversion metrics are underperforming? And then develop a solid hypothesis. This really isn't about, testing something that you saw in a presentation like this or in a blog post, but really about nailing down what's going to have impact on your site. You also want to know when to just fix it. So I've done full end-to-end audits on desktop and mobile sites, and when I'm working with my own clients, I have a list. I split it up into a list of, these are just fix-it things, and I'm going to share a number of mobile just fix-it in this presentation to kick us off. But you want to know when things are just go ahead and make the change. Don't bother A/B testing it, and keep the A/B testing on things where you, again, have a hypothesis, you're not quite sure what's going to win. You want to have a takeaway that gives you real insights to understand your customer better versus, this button versus that button. Radical redesigns. If you're just starting out and you don't have a ton of traffic, you don't have a ton of bandwidth to do a lot of testing, don't be afraid to test 3 or 4 or 5 different variables in every experiment, right? Ideally, if you really want to pinpoint it to understand exactly what caused the lift, that's great. You can do that, but it can take a really long time to actually get a valid test. What you really want to do is lift conversion as quickly as possible. You want to be doing more radical redesigns than more granular ones. And this is kind of a famous test that was run by Google years ago, but I mean, they have the luxury of the traffic that they could test something as almost silly, as the right shade of blue. So they're able to split test into 41 different buckets and send 2% of traffic to every single variation and still get a statistically significant result in 2 weeks. Not all of us are that lucky. So as promised, what are some of the just fix-its? So number one, page load speed. This is really, really critical because it doesn't just impact conversion rates, but it's also now impacting SEO because Google is using it as a ranking factor. And I can't go into, for the sake of time, all of the different ways you can optimize for page load speed, but before you even think of running an A/B test, make sure you've done everything that you can to speed up your site, because that will just raise the water, lift all of the boats throughout all of your site. A/B testing, we usually pick one little thing in one area of the site, but page load speed is an investment that will just improve everything. Number two, you want to look for mobile and responsive design, in particular, look for glitches. So I'm going to share some of these right now. some of the hidden mobile glitches that you can have, entry pop-ups. So entry pop-ups are great. They convert like crazy, you know, no matter what your personal feelings towards being interrupted in your user experience is, they tend to have a really good uptick for whether you're collecting an email address or whatever offer that you have. However, on mobile, you have to make sure that they carry over and are mobile friendly too. So I did have a client at one time that had 75% of their mobile their traffic overall was coming to mobile, but 95% of them were bouncing. The challenge with that is obvious, right? Is the actual identified problem was when you actually went to the mobile website and you tested it, you're like, okay, I see. There's a pop-up that nobody can close. It spans wider than the mobile site. So 5% apparently of mobile users were savvy enough to know that if they could flip it from portrait mode into landscape mode, they could find the little X and proceed into the site. But that was just a huge barrier. So again, you want to make sure that your entry pop-ups are optimized for mobile, and not just for the size of the width, but also for readability and, you know, when they're triggered and all that kind of thing. Another thing is hiding the search bar on mobile. Some mobile templates that I've seen are kind of designed not for e-commerce first. They're designed maybe for publishing sites or things that are where a regular menu will suffice and search isn't as prominent as it would be for an e-commerce catalog. And the larger your catalog, the more important search is, especially when you consider mobile traffic. Mobile menus aren't that fun to try and navigate through. So here's an A/B test, and search is a main function. It was missing from the original template, so this A/B test decided to put it front and center, make it really prominent. And we could see that the result was 32% higher engagement with mobile search and 51% more searches through tablets as well. Banners. So I see this a lot with responsive design because a homepage banner or other graphical merchandising kind of elements tend to be designed for desktop first, and very few sites are leveraging their content management to swap in and swap out mobile optimized or images that are sized right for different breakpoints with responsive design. And what that ends up doing is squeezing down text, you know, so the image will scale down and so does the text. And so a lot of times it's all caps white text with a ghost button, you know, that shrinks down, and they're harder to see. And what happens is users just ignore them, right? It just eats up space, or at worst, they can't tap the button or really kind of process what's going on in the image. So be aware of that when you're looking at your site. Also consider things that, especially if you're using a template that you got from Theme Forest or similar site, a lot of these templates get you up and running really quickly, but the coding and the behavior of these templates aren't always optimal for the actual user and features and functionality. And one of those that I've seen repeatedly is filtered navigation actually appearing at the bottom of a product list. So you have to scroll through a list of products and then you hit the navigation, and obviously that's not optimal. So just look for hidden things. Test every page on your desktop actually and watch. So drag and pull the browser size and you'll see content reflowing in real time, and you'll start to notice this behavior. So keep watching out for, you know, design elements that are unwittingly popping up in the wrong places. And I will show a couple more examples in this presentation. You also want to think about drop-down menus on product pages and in checkout. So there's sometimes when drop-down menus you can't really get away from, you know, in checkout, if you're doing every single country that you ship to or every single state that you ship to, you know, you're going to have to use a drop-down menu. But for things like selecting a size, quantity, for example, you don't want to engage this spinner menu here. If you have an iPhone, you can relate that sometimes these spinner menus kind of feel like the Price is Right's showcase showdown wheel, right? Like sometimes you just don't know where it's going to land if you are a little too aggressive with your thumb. So, I mean, it's just easy enough to have tappable elements. It's also a great idea for sizes and colorways, etc., to show them as tappable elements, because you can also see what products are in stock and out of stock without having to pull up a drop-down menu as well. All right, this is an easy one because it's so easy to fix. You don't need to alter your template at all. You don't need to add any code to your e-commerce platform. This is just a programming thing that can be easily fixed, and that's pulling the wrong keyboard in checkout fields. So for mobile devices, there's different keyboards that you can pull up. So here's the alphanumeric keyboard with the numeric hidden behind a toggle, right? So when you've got fields that are straight numbers, so zip code in the US, postal code in any other country, it's fine to start with one of these QWERTY keyboards first. They're just going to have to toggle back and forth. But when you're doing with credit card numbers, zip codes, anything that is a pure number field, you should be using a numeric keypad like this. It's more finger friendly. It's just more usable than something like that. And then call to action button stacking. So this is another glitchy gotcha of using responsive design. So here we've got an example of a typical checkout, and if you have done any conversion optimization in your career, you're probably weeping at the sight of 3 stacked buttons all styled exactly the same way in the same color. So am I. Weep a little bit more when you see it scale down to the mobile version. So here we've got buttons that span the entire width of the mobile screen that can easily be mistaken for a graphical element. So for example, the proceed to checkout button up at the top, that just looks like it's part of the design background, like a header menu. Then you've got 3 very closely, tightly stacked, well, 4 if you count the apply button here, that if somebody with not such great finger control, like we all have different size fingers. We might be in low lighting on a mobile phone. We might have eye strain, anything like that. It can be more difficult to identify the checkout button on here. So just watch for these kind of things. Here's another example here. Again, when we're talking about responsive behavior, you need to test this on a desktop to see how content reflows and if it's reflowing in the way that it should. Because here we get a checkout button that floats right up to the top. It's not where the user expects it, which points for you if you know that it should be in the bottom. As a user scrolls, the checkout really should be at the bottom, especially if you get like 6 or 7 or 8 different products in a basket. Don't put the checkout button up at the top. And again, this is just a casualty of responsive design. It doesn't have to be this way. Another issue is guest checkout being pushed below the fold. So here is actually, I'm going to call it out. This is Urban Outfitters. They may have changed it since I've taken this screenshot, but really there's no need for the sign up as an option in the center. You can always allow the user to save their information if they check out as a guest and create an account as the last step. You should be able to do that. Now, here's what happens when you scale down a mobile. It takes 3 full screens. So this is actually mobile screens. Screen number 1's on the left, screen 2 in the middle, screen 3 as you scroll down. All of the call to action buttons are the same. Same color, same styling. Checkout as guest is dead last. Ideally, you would have sign in and checkout as guest visible in the first screen from mobile and able to be interacted with. And ideally, put your guest checkout first. Even returning visitors often have a lot of trouble remembering what email address they used and what password they created just for your site, especially if they shop on a lot of sites and don't shop super frequently with you. Even Amazon reported at one time years ago that some of their account holders had 10 different accounts because they just kept creating a new one. I think Prime has curbed that behavior because once you smack down $80 a year, you're going to remember your credentials, but just keep that in mind. All right, so let's talk about banner blindness. This is a term that kind of generated out of the old school publishing sites that used to be littered with banners everywhere, and this was a phenomenon where users just learned really quickly how to filter out stuff that was just advertising, just superfluous stuff trying to scream for their attention. We get really good as users of kind of ignoring that. And the challenge is that some graphical elements, if they look a little bit too much like ads, end up having that same impact on our website and in our design. And, this also happens when we're designing merchandising zones and actually trying to use our banners for good, such as when a banner like this, where there's an offer and we're trying to communicate some kind of a value. So this is always a good idea to test this, because you may be surprised at the impact or the actual detriment sometimes of using graphical elements that people are going to ignore or that compete with other elements on the page. So this is Electronic Arts, and they tested a cleaned up version of their landing page. I hope you're sitting down, because you're going to fall out of your chair. Be prepared. 43% higher conversion when they got rid of this banner, even though there was a discount offer in that banner. And they're paying full margin off their next purchase. They're unaware that there is an incentive for a future purchase. Just getting rid of the clutter, dramatic increase in conversion. Here's a template. This could have been any e-commerce template anywhere, right? This is very common to see some kind of a graphic banner, a hero image on a category page. If you remove that, for VeggieTales, what was the result? The result was 17.4% higher revenue per visitor. Crazy, right? I love Marketing Experiments and Flint McLaughlin, and if you have followed that site and their teachings for a long time, you know how important plastering and over-communicating your value propositions and guarantees and why you should buy from us and all this kind of stuff over the website is, right? But this should all be tested, because if you can notice here, the free shipping over 50, there's a lot going on here, right? This isn't designed super sexily. There's a serif font and all caps and that kind of thing, but it's also not overly ad looking or distracting either. But what happens when you remove it and just focus on the product? Well, for this particular site, 54% increase in revenue per visitor. Amazing, right? Breaking the rules and lifting conversion. This is a throwback. I don't know if it's Thursday where you are. It's actually Thursday for me today, but here's a little Throwback Thursday from the Olympic store. So at Elastic Path, we actually ran the Vancouver 2010 Olympic store in-house, and that gave us an opportunity to do a ton of A/B testing. So we kind of had a unique position where our hot season lasted about 2 weeks to about 4 weeks, because there's a couple weeks before the games where people were buying their gear. We had the site up for about a year, but there was one big massive season, and we didn't have the luxury of testing over a really, really long period of time. We needed to get quick wins, do some radical redesigns, etc. So this was back to 2009, 2010, when this template was sort of launched on the site immediately, and then we did some tweaking. But notice here, this little surfboard here, the shop with confidence. So that goes again to the concept of plastering your value propositions loud and proud everywhere that you can. So we actually did 2 treatments. You can notice here the downplayed of the shop with confidence. That's just downplayed a little bit. We reworked the product configurators, etc. Long story short, both of these template changes outperformed. So minimizing the shop with confidence, and honestly, policies, come on, policies are only exciting if you're in legal department. But we just made the focus more about actually, adding to cart and buying the product, and the results were double digits on both of them. So we were able to implement the 19.9% conversion winner and use that for our busy season. Let's talk about product discovery. So here's an example of the Vancouver 2010 Olympic store again, and this is sort of a semi-radical redesign. We changed several elements at once. It wasn't a completely, reimagined template by any means, but what we did was we got rid of this left-hand navigation and gave it a more streamlined, graphical, in my opinion, user-friendly way to navigate and explore the catalog. So the results were 3% higher conversion, and while that might not see as dramatic as other examples in this series, just remember that this is a conversion rate, an action that is taken at the very end of the funnel, right? So this redesign helped people navigate to a product successfully and then also re-navigate, because we did have high average order value. Typically you don't come in buy one pin or like one little plushie, you come back and buy a collection of memorabilia. So being able to come back to the homepage and re-navigate was important, and that lift conversion by 3%. Here's another oldie but a goodie. The Pink brand tested this. Do you remember Mad Libs from school? Like these little books that you would fill in. It's called, this was like conversational commerce before its time. So this shirt finder, you could actually just tell the site, I love to wear a blank that is to blank, and it looks fantastic when it's blank, blank, number in blank. Show me my shirt. So this was a new way to discover. And did it outperform? Ooh, yes, it did. 12% higher orders, 12% higher revenue, and 14% higher order value. Now, we did touch upon banner blindness in a previous section here. So talking again just about reducing distraction and clutter and moving utilities up higher on the page. Do they get interacted with more? Are they noticed more? Do they improve results? They sure do. How about to the tune of 19% higher conversion from category pages by removing superfluous left-hand navigation? Filters are king. Here's another example. Sometimes you want to get creative, or designers get creative and want to throw a little bit of visual interest. And what happened here was actually, so the left side, the more creative side, was the control. It was the default template. And the hypothesis was maybe we could get more click-through and conversion by just showing a normal everyday average grid. And the original was underperforming by 17% revenue per visitor. And again, when you're looking at revenue per visitor, money talks. So this was a no-brainer to implement the new and arguably more boring design. Now this is a really, really important A/B test case, because today we're in a day where mobile commerce comes first, and there's a big push towards headless commerce and bolting on single page applications or progressive web apps on the front end. And these JavaScript frameworks make it lightning fast. That's one of their value props, is to make your site faster and make content load faster. And there's kind of been this trend towards treating product lists like a social newsfeed. So it auto populates as soon as you hit the bottom of the page, and hey, that might be fine in a newsfeed, where as soon as you look at your friend's snapshot of lunch or the picture of their plane wing as they're taking off on vacation, and you never want to see it again. But when you're scrolling through products, hey, you need to keep something in your memory bank, because you might want to scroll up and find it again. So what Etsy did, they actually invested quite a bit of time into building out this version on the right here, which was the auto scroll. Get rid of this dinosaur desktop era pagination, right? And make it a mobile friendly, forever scrolling, easy experience. But thank goodness they actually did run an A/B test on this, because what they found was this application actually reduced items viewed by 50% versus, just plain old pagination. There was an 11% drop in clicks. There's an 8% drop in item favorites and 23% fewer orders. So again, money talks. You got to use some kind of pagination. Test this for yourself on your mobile sites, but it's something to keep in mind. And this isn't the only way that you can let a user kind of control their experience and not let auto loading get out of control. Like they could have easily put a button right over here that said, load the next 15 products or something like that, and allow the user a little bit more control, or have more tap-friendly pagination and not make it overwhelming, like there's 250 pages of results. There's other ways that they could have tested and designed this, but I love this shocking result, because it just shows that, we have to be careful with some of the trends, especially the mobile-first trends, and always bring it back to the user experience and your performance metrics. So we have this concept of what types of products are spec driven, driven by features, and maybe they look kind of visually similar from their thumbnails, but what really matters is drilling into the details. What are their attributes? What are their specifications that might make them different from another? And in this example, right, decluttering it. And here's the thing too, especially with mobile visitors, like you want to be able to reduce the amount of pogo sticking back and forth, clicking through to a product page and then coming back, and help people compare things at a glance. But in this case, honestly, like just removing this actual clutter, extra clutter, led to almost 10% higher revenue. So a good thing for this type of product. Now, just to blow your mind a little bit and to reinforce why you shouldn't just take examples from here, take them as inspiration, don't take them as gospel. Here's another example. So Amazon kind of has solidified this convention of having a white background. I believe you can't even list on Amazon unless you have a nice clean background for your image, a white background. Now, in this example, the A/B test, it actually showed 71% higher conversion when they showed the product in context. So it shows for this product type, for this customer on this site, people are responding better to seeing maybe the size, relative size to an office. It doesn't have to be previewing it in their own environment, but just seeing it somehow in use was a little bit more persuasive, kept them on the site longer for whatever reason. 71% more got right through the checkout from these category pages. And here you can see the absolute conversion. We moved from a single-digit conversion to double-digit. All right, perceived value. So here are some interesting ones. Now, these are not A/B split tests, but these are more qualitative tests done by the agency Conversion Excel. And this was kind of interesting because they noticed that the test subjects actually found the shirt with the more white space around it to be perceived as more expensive, a higher value. They ask questions like, at what price is this product? What's its regular price, and at what price point is it a bargain? And interestingly, on this site with the J. McLaughlin brand, customers really perceive the smaller image as classier, more expensive. Then they tested again with a Macy's frame around it, and they found that the effect was not as much. So it's really interesting that it just kind of brings up the talking point that, your customers are going to perceive products and value based on a lot of things. So image size can be one variable. Your brand and what they expect your brand to stand for is another, right? So this might seem more of like an actual designer label than maybe Macy's that you might think is kind of has a variety of price points. There tends to be, we think for usability's sake, the people want to buy things sight unseen. They want to see a bigger image. But you might find testing this has a similar effect. There was one, I live for the comments section sometimes because they posted this on their blog, and some of the comments were really insightful and, kind of brought up, well, maybe, men shop differently than women. And maybe this was just an ugly shirt. Someone called that out and said, like, this was just an ugly shirt. Making it bigger just amplified its ugliness. So, you have to think about context variables. Correlation doesn't always equal causation. Sometimes you need to dig a little bit deeper. You also need to think about, there's the metrics. A little slow with my trigger finger here. So here's an opposite effect. This is kind of an obvious one. An external hard drive. You kind of want a bigger picture, kind of conveys extra storage, extra value. So when they were asked, what is the perceived retail value, there was a higher retail value by about $16 when they were shown a larger image, and the product was a bargain at a full $10 more too. So when you're running sales, running promotions, and competing against Amazon, little things like this pricing psychology, this unconscious factors can be very, very interesting to track and measure. I also want to talk a little bit if you're in the apparel business and any types of advertising too. So we're not just talking about product detail pages, but we're also talking about what kind of imagery you're using in your email campaigns and in your banners on your homepage and in your social posts, your Instagram, etc. Advertisers have for a long time known and recognized that images can be very emotionally evoking, and they can have a positive or negative effect based on things like, who's the model? Does she look like she's been living on, she's been up all night and living off of coffee and cigarettes and having a bad day and kind of has a pissed off, vapid look on her face? Or, does she look like she could be somebody looking straight at you, had a good day? Do you identify with her? Does she look like an urban professional like you might be, etc.? So when you're styling products or using them in campaigns and stuff, like definitely test this kind of stuff because it can have a major impact. I want to just share an example of a client that was doing their own in-house photo shoots, and that was doing really, really well for them. But a trick that they used to do is if a product wasn't selling super well, they would just reshoot it on their top model, the one that seemed to just dress her up in anything and she can sell it, and they would get the product moving again. So if you don't have the luxury of doing in-house photo shoots and having that rapid, kind of fast asset creation, you can think about swapping in thumbnail images. Like maybe there was a pose or an expression on the face that's buried in the second or third image that you could make the default page, because remember, people are clicking through from product lists and from other merchandising zones on the site, and that can impact click-through and interest in a product as well. So just want to emphasize, sometimes it comes down to who wore it better, and sometimes an A/B test is a great way to find that out. Again, we're moving more towards a hyper-personalized and hyper-targeted commerce and AI-driven commerce, but I want to call out geo targeting. If you are in retail and you're working for or manage a chain that has stores across the country, you might notice that sales trends, somebody's going to style the exact same shirt very different in Miami than they are going to in New York or Los Angeles or a more conservative area. So you might want to consider that when you're sending out your email campaigns or when you're doing outreach or when you're personalizing. I know that this type of hyper-targeted, show thumbnail image A or thumbnail image B based on geography isn't happening within e-commerce catalogs right now. But again, think about in your campaigns, if you want to segment by geography, if you want to gather feedback, use in-store sales to help inform your email teams and your creative teams, etc., just to understand some of these things. Then you can lift conversion and understand your customer a little bit better. So let's move on to free shipping. It is obviously a fan favorite. We've kind of been groomed to expect free shipping, abandon cart if there's not an attractive free shipping offer or the one that we want. So I really like these examples that I'm going to share with you today. Sport Check, and this was in conjunction with the A/B testing company Wider Funnel. And notice here, there's this badge, free shipping on orders of $25 or more, which is killer, right? Like this cart, for example, is way over that $25 threshold. But they found that when they changed this to say, congratulations, you qualify for free shipping. Yeah, make it red, but make them feel like they've actually achieved something, right? It's the persuasive copy here that really attributed to the 7.3% conversion lift. New Face, they sell kind of bougie beauty tools, which are definitely over $75, but they didn't have a free shipping call out in their banner or anything that was really obvious on their site. So they tested just showing free shipping over 75%. And that lift orders almost 100%. I mean, 90% is pretty good. And their AOV boosts 7%, even though most of their products were already qualifying for free shipping eventually. But yeah, their AOV actually increased as well with this free shipping over 75. Now, here's another Sport Check example. You gotta have eagle eyes to see what the difference is at a glance. But here you can see this badge on product pages, free shipping on orders over $50. Okay, instead of having nothing. So I'm sure you predicted that it did lift orders. But it originally started lifting by 6%, and then it dropped down to 2.5% of orders. And what they actually found was midway through the test, and somebody's going to get their hand slapped because midway through the test, they actually raised this free shipping threshold to over $50 to over $75. So that's how they saw the spread, 6% over 50 and 2.5% over 75. Now, this is a reason why if you are using an outsourced agency to do your A/B testing, there needs to be some kind of communication or visibility with the rest of your merchandising team so they understand what tests are running and what the implications of just making site changes and merchandising and pricing changes midway through a test can do. Fortunately, Wider Funnel was savvy enough to pinpoint what the change was and identify it and retroactively parse out the conversion lift anyway. But yeah, the left hand needs to know what the right hand is doing sometimes. Actually, I just want to go back to this for a second. This is a website. It's really interesting because the difference between $50 and $75 was significant on SportCheck. We at the Vancouver 2010 Olympic store, we tested this as well. We did free shipping over 50 and free shipping over 75. And we actually found that there was no difference between free shipping over 75 and 50. So it didn't, change behavior at all. We had a high AOV, so we just left it at 75. I want to show you this National Geographic store for a second because they actually did a very detailed test. They tested free shipping offers over 4 different tiers. So they tested free shipping on any order with no threshold. They tested with $50, $75 or more, and $100 or more. So Captain Obvious might say, wow, the free shipping unlimited, right, probably outperformed everything else in terms of conversion rate, maybe not revenue, but what actually happened? Actually, it was free shipping over 50 that got a third of a revenue boost. It beat the no threshold and it beat over 100. And interestingly enough, for whatever reason, this 75%, the $75 dropped revenue in half. So that was pretty dramatic. And so week 2, things look a little bit better. If you've ever run an A/B test, you know that you can kind of get excited or shocked by some of the dramatic results that come in early. But if you let it run for another week or let the numbers kind of prove themselves out and smooth themselves out, we see the trends still holding, right? They're still the same positions, same relative lifts, but they're down a bit. But still, the free shipping over 50 was the grand winner. And interestingly enough, still people didn't respond to that over 75 for whatever reason. All right, now I want to talk about distractions. Squirrel. So this is something that I really love. I really love this A/B test because it busts through all of my biases and presuppositions. Because I would think, that it would be a great idea to use a poppin' cherry red color for the cart button, help mobile users find that button, get them through checkout. But what actually happened on this site used heat mapping, the smart folks at Fonk. They used heat mapping tools and they found a really curious behavior. The people in the cart and even after they initiated checkout were using this juicy little cart with the red screaming red button as navigation. They thought that was proceed through the checkout rather than scrolling down, filling out the form, continue. They were using that because it pops. So their hypothesis was, if we downplay this a little bit, it won't stand out as much and we won't get as many using their spot and checkout and bouncing back to the beginning. So it did result in 2% conversion, but the more dramatic impact was 40% fewer icon clicks on desktop and 27% fewer icon clicks on mobile. That's pretty big time. And that validates that, people were really confused. Now, if you're really tricky, you can go ahead and program this that before you get to the cart, it's big and juicy. And then once you're in the cart, it goes to white. All right, now I want to talk about calls to abandonment. And the biggest call to abandonment ever in e-commerce is an open field, which just screams, fill me in, right? Our brains are trained to fill in any open field. So the one thing that this has got going for it is that this is filled with text, so the brain might skip over it. But here's where you would expect a checkout button or a proceed or a move forward in some kind of way. And instead, we've got this call to go and leave the site, go find a promo code or a discount code, give that margin away with a discount, give that margin away to affiliate that never referred the sale, give that customer a reason to maybe not come back, especially if they're on mobile, because the friction in leaving a site and returning is a reality. And it also trains the customer to expect a discount every single time. So what you want to do is downplay this. I want to show you another example. Like this is a little bit better because the promotion code being placed in the bottom left is kind of, there's a lot of competing elements and it's less likely to be seen. This is better placement than what we saw before. But again, responsive design strikes again. Look what happens when this gets shrunk down before they can see a continue or a checkout button. And again, if you place the PayPal button up at the top, it's banner blindness, might not see it. So in the first view of mobile, or even if you have 2 or 3 or 4 items in this cart, you keep scrolling down, and then you're hit with this empty field, like enter a promotion code. Like, yeah, I want a promotion code, especially when this item costs $800. Give me a promo code, right? So this is not an A/B test case, but what I want to show you is the ways that you can make the promo code discrete, okay? So here's an expand collapse treatment. This is really interesting. There's a number of ways that you can do this. I'm going to show you a couple other design ideas for this. But High Conversion and PayPal did a cross-retailer study. So they actually took the average of mobile websites, and they found 8% higher mobile revenue per visitor when you make the promo code collapse. You don't use a big juicy empty field, because trust me, if they have a promo code, they're going to find the box, they're going to look for it, they're going to look under the hood for it, right? The casual browser who can't be bothered isn't going to worry too much about finding the promo code when you make it discrete. Here's another example. You can add or edit the promo code here. Here's another one, like if you are going to use this, make it a ghost button. Don't make it a big juicy call to action here. Make it less prominent than the rest of your design. Okay, here's another one. This is a great tactic because it says, have we emailed you a promo code? And what that spells out is like, yeah, you can get one, but get on our list. Only special people, only VIPs who are on our list get promo codes, so don't bother looking. And by the way, sign up for promo codes. So, that's another great tactic too. And that doesn't mean that you don't give promo codes to affiliates and stuff. You just don't advertise it in such a way that folks are going to abandon your site and hunt for one. We're talking about removing distractions and sometimes just cleaning up a template, even if there's something like a shipping estimator or, just subtle calls to action to continue shopping, etc. A redesign here, yes, they changed 2 or 3 or 4 different things, so you can't pinpoint that it was getting rid of this or getting rid of this or making this blue or making this bigger. That's fine. You want to get a bigger lift. They ended up getting 11% more proceeds to checkout, so it was worth doing this test, and just kind of goes to show that redesigning this can get you far, even if you're removing arguably a good utility from the cart page. Everybody and their dog knows that best practice in checkout is enclosing the checkout and getting rid of all of this distracting banner stuff, search bar, navigation, etc. You'll get more people through the cart. In this particular case, that amounted to 14% higher revenue per visitor. So we're not even just talking about conversion rate, we're talking about real dollar bills, y'all. Checkout friction. Back to our little star, the Vancouver 2010 Olympic store. So many issues here. You would think that redesigning it would be shooting fish in a barrel, and it kind of was. The checkout as a guest was not very prominent. We had the login, we had the new customers, we had this shop with confidence monstrosity. So we actually implemented a one-page checkout before one-page checkouts were cool. So remember, this was 10 years ago. And we moved towards this one-page checkout with the returning customer sign-in, etc. We were actually one of the first test case studies to ever publish this, and we did it on Get Elastic. There was 257% higher checkout completion and 8.5% higher average order value. All right, we're getting close to the end here. Thanks for trucking. Let's talk about cart recovery. So yes, a little old school tactic that still remains. If you can get an email as early as possible, please do so. But not everybody makes it to the checkout. Not everybody successfully gives you an email address, then abandons so that you can send a cart recovery email. However, if you do get the email, consider A/B testing these actual emails, right? Not just the timing, not just the offer in it, but even things like view my cart or complete my order. You would think that complete my order is the stronger call to action and that this would convert a little bit better because it's like, yes, I want to complete. But actually it was the boring, like just view my cart. 33% higher click-through rate, and that is nothing to bark at, to take a little dog pun, because this is a dog here. I don't know if you can see it. And then also we have Another tactic, these are from Rejoiner, the Rejoiner app. They actually do a lot of testing for their own clients, so they shared these publicly. So this is an interesting case where instead of showing them multiple items that were still in their cart, just pick one and make the image bigger. And they didn't share the absolute conversion rate numbers on this, but they said that this larger one product image was higher click-through and conversion. And Conversion XL also blogged about this too and said that the same tactic converted better for them as well, for their A/B testing clients in retail. Now here's another, we've been talking about this a lot on Get Elastic about chatbots and how you can use them for remarketing. And one of the advantages of sending a direct SMS or, an instant message directly to somebody's app is that these messages get up to 90% open rates. And when we're talking about traditional retail email in everybody's overly cluttered inboxes, that could be anywhere from 2 to 20%. So we're looking at a much higher open rate. And the beauty of this too is that you don't need to collect an email address. So if they visited your site, added something to cart, and then took off, if they were logged in to their Facebook account, they have a Facebook remarketing pixel that gets dropped on your site, and then you can use it. And again, here are just 3 examples that I've collected, but there's different elements that you can test. So you could test, offering a discount to check out now. Use this kind of urgency. Your card is about to expire. Whose card ever actually expires? But you can use this, test this kind of verbiage. You can use this more customer service kind of thing, like, hey, just to let you know, we've saved it for you, poke, poke, poke. Or you could take more of a conversational commerce kind of thing, like a chatbot would say, do you still want this? Hey, you can get it now. Testing different types of approaches and initiation. So just some inspiration for y'all. Also, exit intent pop-ups. So you can kind of detect after somebody has been in a cart and they start doing that slow scroll back, the mouse movement back up here, or on mobile, there's special coding that you can do that will detect a quick scroll back up to the top or a use of the back button that can trigger one of these exit intent pop-ups to finish your order. I just want you to keep in mind that if you're going to ask somebody who's abandoning to enter their email and then go into their email and find a string of alphanumerics that they're going to have to come back to your site, remember, and then plug in, you just might not have the same conversion left as if you do something where, you spell it out what the discount is and give them a one-tap return to the cart, auto-apply the discount, and add a little bit of urgency there. That's a stronger tactic that if you can do it programmatically, you're going to have better results from. So here is the one A/B test that I could dig up on this exit intent tactic for e-commerce. And I'm going to criticize it a little bit because, my preference would be for a modal window like this to just test one element, all things equal. So here they did a couple things. They got complete purchase and go to my cart. And if you were tracking along a few slides back, we talked about how these look similar enough. What's the big deal? But that can be up to 33% difference in click-through rate, right? Here's another thing too. It's kind of odd to have the decimals here. And what really bothers me is this idea of store credit, because store credit kind of feels like the retailer that didn't want to give you your money back when you didn't like the product, and they kind of hold you hostage by their store credit. So it's kind of a negative connotation there. And this really odd, like $4.25 is a Starbucks, right? But here, 10% off, this is just stronger, right? So it's not surprising that this one outperformed by 21%. But again, you might want to do some radical redesigns on your homepage or other areas of your site, test 3 or 4 things at a time. But if it's something like this, a very specific offer where there's a very specific metric that you're following, just be a little bit more precise with this kind of stuff. All right, and I want to shout out, I used some of my own examples, my own experience, A/B testing, and our experiences here at Get Elastic, but I really want to shout out Wider Funnel, Conversion XL, Rejoiner, Optimizely, OptiMonk, abtestcases.com, which if you haven't checked out, go check them out right now. They're free, and they're kind of like an index of amazing A/B test case examples, and high conversion as well for that mobile coupon box statistic. So thank you so much. If you liked this webcast and you're not already subscribed to Get Elastic, please do so. We're going to be putting out more of this stuff. Hope you follow along. We're also on Instagram, we're on Twitter, we're on Facebook, we're on LinkedIn. Our handle on Instagram and Twitter is @GetElastic. We'll be putting out more video, more webcasts, more blog posts, more interviews, some podcasts coming on. We would love to have you join us for the ride. Thanks again. It's been Linda Bustos. Peace out.